The storm had already begun long before the rain touched the city. Inside the heart of Eleanor Hayes, the billionaire who had everything except the one thing she desperately needed this week. Someone who could stand beside her and convince her parents she wasn't the lonely, broken daughter they believed she had become. She stared at the invitation letter with trembling fingers, the golden seal mocking her. The annual family summit, a place where perfection was a requirement, and love, real love, was nothing more than a decorative accessory. She whispered into the empty penthouse, feeling the walls echo back her fear. I need a boyfriend, just for this week. And somewhere across town, a single father named Daniel Carter was tucking his little daughter into bed on a creaky mattress they shared because he couldn't afford another, muttering under his breath with the exhaustion of a man who had carried too much alone. I'm not sleeping on the sofa again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good people meeting at the right time, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Eleanor's life was a glass tower, beautiful, tall, and fragile. Daniel's life was a small rented room, warm, cramped, and real. Their paths crossed the next morning when Eleanor's car, sleek and new, broke down near the little garage where Daniel worked part-time after his morning construction shift. He was greasy, tired, underpaid, and trying to keep himself awake with cheap coffee, but when he saw her step out of the car, exhaustion masked beneath expensive perfume, something inside him softened. She looked lost, not in direction, but in life. And she felt it too, the quiet sincerity in his voice, the kind that money couldn't buy. While waiting for the car to be checked, Eleanor watched Daniel interact with his daughter, Lily, who had been dropped off unexpectedly because her babysitter had canceled. The small girl ran to him, arms wide, her laughter filling the dusty garage with a warmth Eleanor didn't know she had been starving for. Daniel apologized for the inconvenience, but Eleanor shook her head. She wasn't inconvenienced, she was moved. Maybe for the first time in a long time. As hours passed, Eleanor talked. Not like a billionaire. Not like a woman hiding behind company shares and social expectations. She talked like a human being. Daniel listened. Not for connections, not for gain, but because he could tell her heart was tired. When the time came to leave, her voice cracked slightly as she thanked him, surprised by how strangely safe she felt around a man who had nothing except his honesty, his hands worn from labor, and his daughter who looked at him like he was the sun. That night, Eleanor found herself staring at the mirror. Her parents had always said she looked strongest alone, but suddenly alone felt like a burden. And that burden pushed her into making a reckless decision. She returned to the garage the next day. Daniel blinked in surprise when she nervously offered him a strange request. Pretend to be my boyfriend for 1 week, meet my parents, act like we're something real. But Daniel, hearing the desperation in her voice, answered with a half-smile that was equal parts exhausted and stubborn. If I'm doing this, I'm not sleeping on any sofa. Eleanor didn't understand what he meant until he explained gently. He didn't want to play the role of a background extra in someone's life. If he was going to help her, he wanted to be treated like a real person, not a prop, and he wouldn't let himself be pushed aside or embarrassed, not for her, not for the money she offered. His pride wasn't something she expected, and it humbled her. She agreed. What followed was a whirlwind. Daniel, with his honest eyes and rough hands, learning to dress in suits. Eleanor, with her guarded heart, learning to laugh with Lily. The three of them in her massive penthouse, sharing dinner like a family that had accidentally formed itself. Daniel wasn't perfect. He was awkward, too straightforward, and sometimes he didn't know which fork to use. But he was exactly what Eleanor had needed. Someone who saw her, not her wealth. When they arrived at the family estate, Eleanor's parents raised brows at Daniel's simple background, but he didn't shrink. He spoke with confidence, held Eleanor's hand with sincerity she wasn't expecting, and when he talked about her, as if he truly admired the woman she was beneath her armor, the room softened. For a moment, Eleanor felt something she had never felt before in her parents' mansion, belonging. But beneath the beautiful illusion, fear began to stir. Eleanor didn't want the week to end. Daniel didn't either, though he told himself otherwise. Lily had grown attached. The child clung to Eleanor like she had finally found the gentle mother figure she had been missing. And Eleanor, she found herself lying awake at night, wondering how something fake had begun to feel more real than anything she had ever lived. On the final day of the summit, her parents pulled Daniel aside. They thanked him, offered him money, even suggested he step away gently before Eleanor got hurt. But Daniel refused, not because he thought he deserved her, but because he didn't want Eleanor to feel bought again. Still, their doubts planted fear in his heart. Could he truly fit into her world? That night, he packed his bag. The last thing Eleanor saw was Daniel standing at the door of the penthouse, shoulders heavy, whispering that he should return to the life he came from. It shattered her. Lily cried, clinging to Eleanor's leg, begging Daniel not to leave. But he walked away, telling himself it was the right thing. Eleanor didn't cry easily, but that night, she broke, for a man who had entered her life pretending to be something temporary and ended up showing her the meaning of something real. Days passed. The penthouse felt colder, the silence louder. Her parents noticed the change and realized the truth. Their daughter wasn't broken, she had finally tasted love and lost it. A week later, Daniel received a knock at his small apartment door. It was Eleanor, not dressed in luxury, not polished, just raw and trembling. She didn't speak for a moment. She just looked at him, then at Lily, then back at him again. And with tears finally spilling, she whispered the most honest words she had ever said, that the week he left, she discovered the truth, they weren't pretending anymore. This time, Daniel didn't hesitate. He pulled her close, and Lily hugged them both, giggling as if her heart had always known this moment was coming. Eleanor didn't need a boyfriend to please her parents anymore. She needed Daniel, not for a week, but for a lifetime. And Daniel, who once swore he wouldn't sleep on a sofa again, found himself promising that he'd never let her feel alone on any night for the rest of their lives. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories filled with love, healing, and hope. Please comment below and tell us what moment in the story moved you the most.